Wendigooners and Wendigoonettes, welcome in to another reaction to Wendigoon. It's been a minute since we've done a video with this guy, but I've been requested to do one, and I'm excited to come back and do one with this guy because I love his content. I do have food, so if you hear me munching, I'm sorry. Alright, there's nothing I can do about it. Alright. Anyways, besides that, I heard this is horror. I love horror. I'm thinking about diving back into horror, and that being said, let's get right into it, you know? Jump scare? There's gonna be a jump scare. Chat, it's gonna be a jump scare. 100%. Also, I'm eating...
Skinamarink exists
never
on
mind.
the frontier of modern horror, and a genre defined by pushing people out of their comfort zone and creating new ways to remove the sense of security from an audience. We've seen new creators, both online and in theaters, create stories that deconstruct what a horror movie is. And at the forefront of this idea that we can take art and remove what is conventional from it in order to elicit a direct and precise emotion of fear, we have Skinamarink. Skinamarink has certainly made a name for itself online, both from the nature of how it came to be and the very fact of what the film is. Skinamarink was created by Kyle Edward Ball, a horror director who's been making horror movies for quite some time right here on YouTube. Kyle honed his craft at creating short horror films and then decided to create a full...
I have been seeing a lot of people do that, right? What's that one guy from the Backrooms, right? Kane Pixels, making a movie now. This guy, another example. I've seen like a couple other ones that started small and their projects just get bigger and their ambitions get bigger. And honestly, it's great to see. It's great to see people, you know, pushing it forward that way.
Full-length feature film to be shown at film festivals. That film being Skinamarink. The title of the movie being that of a childhood nursery rhyme, which, if you've seen the film, is definitely fitting. While the film was in festivals, it accidentally leaked online, which created quite a frenzy online, as those who had seen the film were both bewildered and terrified by what they saw. Now, Skinamarink is certainly a divisive movie. It's experimental horror, and as with any horror, it's going to be subjective, but experimental horror especially so. And because of that, I know a lot of people are probably checking out this video to get an idea of if they want to see the movie or not.
Yeah, pretty much.
The short version for those interested is if you like analog horror, and more specifically, if you like the videos featured on Kyle's channel, which
I don't know if I
watched
watched them
in the description, then I highly recommend that you watch Skinamarink, with the understanding that several of the events in the film, and the same events that we're going to talk about today, are very graphic and disturbing. And I know YouTubers say that a lot for any kind of scary content, but I mean it this time. If you're okay with seeing fictionalized depictions of children in danger, then watch the film, and if you are not, then do not watch the film. The purpose of the film, as with most horror, is to bother you, and it does a fantastic job of that. Now, what I'm going to talk about in this video is a complete spoiler breakdown of the events of the film, what it could mean, and why it was made the way that it is. So if you're interested in seeing the movie, I recommend not watching this beforehand, as I am going to break down the events of the story. However,
that's what I'm here for. That's what we're here for. That's what we want. We're waiting for.
To care and are going to watch this analysis regardless, and then that will determine if you watch the movie later.
Yeah, exactly.
And while normally I would say that that defeats the purpose, and you're going to spoil all the events of the plot, as we're going to talk about, you can't really spoil Skinamarink.
Really?
At least not by discussing what happens in the film, because the actual narrative events of the film isn't really explain anything. There is certainly a story in the film, and today we're going to talk about my theories for what that story is.
This sounds very
However,
intriguing.
The narrative of Skinamarink takes a back seat to the nightmare of Skinamarink.
Okay.
Quite literally. And the film exists as the sort of endpoint of what analog horror and horror on the internet in general has become. So even if you listen through this entire video and hear me break down all the moment-to-moment scenes of the film, I feel like you could still watch it and get what the purpose of it is in a personal and meaningful way.
It sounds good.
I'm sure this all sounds really confusing.
It sounds confusing, but I like it. I like that it's confusing. I don't get this, but show me. Show me this unfiltered knowledge that I must understand. Show me why this movie is great.
And existential, but hey, that's kind of the entire movie. So we're going to go through the movie, break down the moment-to-moment events of the story, talk about why the film is shot and composed in the way that it is, and then talk about some of my theories as to what it all means.
All right.
And if anyone thinks this is too soon for me to give a spoiler breakdown of the film before it's out on streaming services, I messaged Kyle directly, and he said it was chill. So you can fight him about it.
That's cool. It's actually awesome. Just DM the guy that made it. Like, hey, can I review this? Yeah, go for it. Yeah, go for it. Yeah, I don't mind it. The internet's what a wonderful thing.
So if that sounds interesting to you, then stick around as we break down the living nightmare of Skinamarink. Right after we deal with whatever episode I'm going through over here. Why, hello there.
Is it an ad?
Working on a recent case, but something just isn't making sense.
Uh-huh.
See, there's a new player on the block making something we haven't seen before.
Uh-huh.
We don't know a lot about them, but what we do know is that they're today's sponsor and that they go by the name Magic Spoon. So from what our boys have been able to determine, Magic Spoon here has 0 grams of sugar, 13 to 14
That's
grams
cool.
of protein, only 4 to 5
what an
grams
interesting
of
ad.
carbs, and only 140 calories per serving. On top of that, there's a cereal bar version making its way around too that only has 1 gram of sugar, 10 grams of protein.
What's the crime? What's the crime, sir? Sir Wendigoon, what's the crime?
4 net grams of carbs and only 130 calories. And if that wasn't enough, Magic Spoon is not only keto friendly, but gluten-free, grain-free, and soy-free as well. And I know, you're probably hearing all this and thinking, well, what makes it such a big case? And what makes it a big case is that on top of all of this, it tastes amazing too. Like, for real, none of us at the precinct can get enough of it.
Oh, I think this is a psyop. They're turning everybody in the precinct against each other. This is all. There's meth in the Magic Spoon. You cannot tell me.
This is probably tampering with evidence, but I don't care anymore. See, whoever's making this seems to be doing it to reinvigorate a feeling of childhood nostalgia, while also promoting a better breakfast and better lifestyle. Right now, they might be unstoppable.
So it's a psychedelic.
It seems they've managed to pull the joy of Saturday morning cartoons and breakfast cereal on the couch while leaving behind the soul-crushing guilt.
Don't let big cereal fool you. They don't tell you about what they do behind the lines. Big cereal always been sketchy. I'll tell you right now. All right, big cereal, don't trust it. All right, they already silenced many whistleblowers. You cannot lie. You cannot hide the truth, big cereal. People will be after you. You can't kill them all. The people will notice.
Eating that much sugar, and it's left all of us scratching our heads as to how they could make a healthier breakfast option that tastes this good. Hence the alias Magic Spoon. And I tell you what, when I find the people that are doing this, I'm gonna ask them normal, non-threatening questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, despite it,
he's been real quiet after they got a Cocoa Puff bird. Bro, the leprechaun, I swear, leprechaun is in it. He's in it. He's in the circle. They're serial killers. That's what I'm telling you. They're serial killers. Right? The first it was Cocoa Puff bird, then it was Lucky Charms, then it was Chips Ahoy. You know, the only one still safe is Chris. What's it called? It's what's it called? What's that? What's the one with Tiger? Fuck. Something Crunch. Point is, he's the only one safe. All right, that's because he's a tiger. All the other ones, all the regular human-looking ones, they've been killed. And the bird, I don't know how they got him, but they did. Frosted Flakes, yeah, Frosted Flakes is the only one left.
Us not knowing how they do it, we do know how you can get your hands on it. Because it seems that right now, if you go to the link in the description or use the discount code Wendigoon at checkout, you will be able to get your Magic Spoon order for $5 off. That's right, $5 off to either order one of Magic Spoon's cereal sets or build your own box to be sent to your house. If you're looking for recommendations, some of our favorites here at the precinct are cinnamon roll, s'mores, frosted, fruity, although you really can't go wrong with any option. On top of that, Magic Spoon has a 100% happiness guarantee, meaning if you're not happy with the product,
meaning drugs,
you can tell them and get your money back, although if our research is anything to go off of, we're sure you'll love it. And on top of all of that, Magic Spoon is shipping to Canada and the UK. meaning it really does seem there's no
They're
stopping.
getting you on
So
it.
might as well get on while you can.
They build up an
Again, let's go to
addiction.
the link in the description, or use discount code Wendigoon to get $5 off and find your new favorite cereal today. Thank you everyone for coming to this briefing, and thank you very much to Magic Spoon for sponsoring this video. It really does mean the most.
Sad to see that they
Hope you
infiltrated
all
the
check
government
them
like
out.
this.
I'm going to be here continuing this, and I'll see you again in my next cereal-induced delusion. But for now, we are back to the video. We are going to go ahead and get into it, but as always, thank you for watching.
Of
For
course.
those that are still here, I want to give you a final note of advice if you're interested in watching Skinamarink. I'll talk about why it's significant later in the video, but on Kyle's channel, there's a video titled Heck. It's about 30 minutes. I think it's fantastic.
Wow.
So I recommend you go watch Heck, and if you like it, then you'll definitely like Skinamarink, because both are very, very similar, again, as I'm going to talk about later. But yeah, if you're thinking about watching Skinamarink and aren't sure yet, check out Heck and see if you like that. So without further ado, let's get into the movie itself. In the opening, we see the two characters who will be our primary focus for the story, Kaylee and Kevin. Other than that, we're not given a lot of clues beyond the fact that this is set within a house in 1995. For several parts of this opening and the movie going forward, the camera is at the level of the children, and we view the world the way that they would see it. Everyday items like a TV or a staircase become monumental in comparison to our stunted point of view. This will serve the film greatly whenever we get to some of the scares that are in store, but we'll get to that. We hear some people stir in the middle of the night as someone begins to wake up.
I like the quality.
Kevin sitting in the hallway, staring up at something. From the dialogue, it seems that Kevin is playing hide and seek with someone, asking questions like, "Are you hiding?" before counting down. However, it seems that after Kevin's done counting, he trips and falls down the staircase. After this, we get quick shots of the child crying, the parents rushing to grab him before taking him to the hospital. I'll talk about this more in the analysis section, but it really does feel like we are given the essence of a memory. Quick, important moments are just flashes as people are panicked and trying to get from...
I'll be honest. If I'm finding my kid playing hide and seek with an invisible entity in the middle of the night, I'm gonna go sleep in a hotel, bro. You got this, man. I'm sleeping in a hotel, man. You have fun with your friend, you know? The last thing I need to hear from my kid, right, who's talking to a ghost or an entity, right, is they don't like you. If I hear that, I'm getting out of there immediately. I'm gonna die. You know, I'm gonna die if I don't leave now. That's what I know. All right, screw the child. I'm surviving.
From one point to the other, whereas the moments of fear and dread are very slow, taking all the time to tell us how terrible that moment was. Eventually, the family returns home, and as they do, we see the TV quickly shut off. This could mean that whoever was home turned off the television whenever the family came home, or that something else was manipulating the TV.
I'm burning the house down if I hear that shit. Nah, bruh. I ain't doing that shit. They could have it. What, 17 more years? I'm saying, what, they could have it, you know? He's got a friend. He'll be fine. You know, I'm gonna go my way.
We hear the dad make a phone call where he explains to someone that Kevin had an accident. He fell down the staircase, and although he doesn't require any stitches, the doctors say that he hurt his head. The father says that Kevin's sister, Kaylee, had said that Kevin had been sleepwalking. This would explain things like Kevin sitting in the hallway by himself and supposedly talking to no one. After this, we see Kaylee walking through a hallway. She goes to get her dad, but after being unable to wake him up, she then goes to get Kevin. As the two of them make their way through the hallway, something bizarre happens. The windows of the house disappear.
Oh. Creepy.
The children ask where did it go, and Kaylee begins to go get her dad again.
That's
Something that
creepy.
makes the terror of this film all the more terrible is that we see everything from the children's perspective. And because of that, all of the supernatural events that happen are left in this area of uncertainty because, for one, we don't know if what we're seeing is real or what the children just think they're seeing, but also the kids don't quite understand the gravity of what's happening.
Right.
Like, sure, they know something's bad, but when they see the window of their house disappear, they don't do what we would do and
freak
have
out,
a breakdown and try to escape. They simply know that something's wrong and it bothers them. So because of that, there's this building tension throughout the story, or at least the first half of it.
Yeah, I see a window disappearing. I'll make a new window right now. I'm jumping through that wall. You know, like, I'll make a new window. I know that the side of the wall is a street. I'm making a new window. I'm jumping through that wall.
Where we know that something really bad's about to happen, and we're helpless to watch as these children just become more and more uneasy. As Kaylee's walking around, the same thing happens to the doors of the house as well. It seems that Kevin tries to call someone, potentially the police, but he can't seem to put the numbers in correctly. Because of their fear, Kaylee asks, "Can we sleep downstairs tonight?" So the two cuddle up in a blanket fort on the couch and leave the TV on. Despite their fear, they have some peace with each other.
I see. Where's the jump scare? I'm waiting for it.
The kids are one of the more impressive aspects of the story to me. There was never a moment where I felt like I was watching children trying to act, as you might with a lot of projects. It just felt like a young brother and sister who were getting progressively more scared as the night goes on. And I realize a lot of that is because of the way that the story's told. Like, we never see the children directly, and they're not doing these long narratives. As a matter of fact, I believe, according to an interview I saw with Kyle, all of the kids' dialogue was ADR'd, or in other words, recorded in a sound studio rather than on set during the scene.
Yeah.
So what would probably normally be child acting is hidden by the dreamlike characteristic of the film. I think it works great because it creates this kind of dissonance where, as things start to become more weird and abstract, we have the root of two normal children who are the victims of this madhouse. In the middle of the night, Kaylee wakes up and then tries to wake up Kevin before deciding to go upstairs by herself.
No,
there,
what's gonna be
the
there?
light's been pulled out of the wall, and as the hallway's clothed in darkness, she still can't seem to wake up her dad. The kids decide to return to the safety of the television, and we see them ask the question, why is mom crying? A lot of the theories that I'm going to talk about later relate back to the mother, so as we're given more information
Did the mom
about
kill the
her,
dad?
keep it in mind. Kevin asks, how come no one has come yet? It seems that it's been night and they've been left alone for just a little too long. The kids continue, maybe we should just, before a loud bang cuts them off.
Oh God.
The kids go to investigate this noise
What's
and
happening?
see that the chair is now upside down, hanging from the ceiling.
That's
the kids
not
stay in
normal.
the living room and continue to discuss where their dad might be. Kevin says, maybe he went with mom, before Kaylee says, I don't want to talk about mom. Later in the night, Kevin sees something weird in the
there's
bathroom.
definitely
and tells Kaylee
drama.
to come look, and sure enough, the toilet has also disappeared. Just like the doors and windows, any connection to the outside world seems to be vanishing.
Oh,
but again,
get out
the
the
children
house.
have yet to grasp how terrifying their situation is.
Get out the
kids
house.
then go upstairs together, now armed with flashlights, to try to find their dad. Also, when I was watching this for the first time, I asked myself the question, why would they use flashlights? Like, why haven't they tried the light switch yet? And then it occurred to me
They can't reach
kids
it.
are like 4 or 5 years old, and they can't reach the light switch.
Yeah, they can't reach the lights.
And that was just a moment for me of recognizing how truly awful this situation is.
Yeah,
Because these kids are so helpless, they have to use flashlights.
That's, oh my God, it's so sad. No, the poor kids, the babies, no, they don't deserve any of this.
Can't even touch the light switch, and it's really sad. In her bedroom, Kaylee sees a Barbie doll floating in the air above her bed, almost pinned to the ceiling. As she's looking at this, Kevin sneaks up behind her and causes her to scream. After this, the kids decide, since they can't use the bathroom upstairs because they're afraid to go upstairs again, they're just going to use a bucket.
I guess. When in situations, a bucket works.
The kids retreat back to the safety of the living room and begin to play with Legos in front of the TV. After this, Kevin falls asleep and Kaylee sits awake, staring down a dark hallway.
Oh,
before
hi!
suddenly, a voice appears.
Oh, no.
A strange voice that whispers and says, Kaylee, come upstairs.
No. Oh, fuck no.
What follows is one of the most tense scenes in the film. Kaylee walks into her dad's room and sees what appears to be her dad sitting up on the side of the bed.
And what happens?
When Kaylee walks over to him, the dad tells her to look under the bed. She does and doesn't see anything. The dad tells her to do it again. This time, after she looks, she rises up to see that her father is gone, and what appears to be her mother is sitting on the other side of the bed.
The
mother begins to speak and says, "Kaylee, your father and me," before something slams shut in the closet.
Did they get divorced?
The mother then continues and says, "We love you and Kevin very much. Kaylee, I need you to close your eyes." Kaylee does, and when she opens her eyes, her mom is gone. Kaylee looks over to the closet and sees that the door is now open. Her mom's voice can be heard from within. The mom says
not the boogeyman.
And a strange whisper begins,
not
similar
the
to the one Kaylee
boogeyman.
heard in the living room. The mom tells Kaylee to go downstairs before we hear what sounds like grunts of pain and bones cracking. Just as the camera pushes in, a hand juts out from around the door with a loud, inhuman squeal being heard.
Oh, I'm gonna hear it. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it.
When Kaylee runs back downstairs, Kevin asks where she went, and Kaylee tells Kevin to help her barricade the hallway. Kaylee isn't able to understand what just happened. All she knows is she watched her parents in this horrific situation, and Kevin can see that she's clearly bothered, so
their parents did some ritual shit. Their parents sold their soul or something. For their kids' protection or something.
After this, it seems
I have no idea, but this is disturbing.
When in the middle of the night, the voice begins to call for Kaylee again.
Oh no,
when Kevin wakes up,
please.
he hears what sounds like Kaylee being scared somewhere in the house. During this, Kevin goes to the bathroom, and as he does, we see that some unseen force begins to move the Legos and toys all across the room. Now, all of the toys the children had laid out on the floor seem stuck to the wall behind the television. When Kevin comes back, he hears the same voice that called for Kaylee, telling Kevin to come to the basement.
Oh no. Oh no, where's Kaylee? Where's Kaylee?
He hears Kaylee saying that she's scared and that she feels strange. While searching through the darkness,
she's gonna be on the roof.
Kaylee. But when we see her face,
there's gonna be something bad. Yep. Oh no. Oh, poor Kaylee.
Something terrible has happened to her. Kevin runs back to the living room, terrified. He sits there in fear as the cartoon continues to play on the television. There's no telling how long Kevin's been here, or how his mind is trying to make sense of all this. He begins to go through the refrigerator before the voice calls out to him again. He gets scared and drops everything he's holding, before the voice whispers to him to go to sleep. Eventually, Kevin does, and while Kevin's asleep, we see that the television is being manipulated.
Oh, God.
The cartoon is being cycled back and forth through the same moment in time. After this, we see that now, some of the toys are disappearing into thin air entirely. After this period of some supernatural force manipulating objects in the house, Kevin wakes back up and begins to play with his Legos. So
the best thing you could do. The best thing. You know what? If you was poor. See, if it's adults, I don't give a damn. But watching kids go through this shit just makes me so uncomfortable, and it's great. I like getting taken out of my comfort zone. This is good. I love this. But my God, do I feel bad for the kids.
Scenes,
especially what happened in
this film, and the one I'm about to describe is probably the most so out of those. So if you've been hearing about these children being in danger and you've been getting a little squeamish, I just wouldn't listen to this next part. Skip to whatever timestamp is on screen now, because it's pretty intense.
I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm locked in.
Kevin freezes for a second and then goes back to playing with his Legos. This time, the voice is much more angry and assertive that it wants to play, and once again, Kevin tries to ignore it. However, after this refusal, we see that in the kitchen, a drawer flies open. Kevin, compelled out of either control, curiosity, fear, or something in between, goes to the drawer. What was opened was a drawer of knives. From it,
I knew it.
Kevin pulls one out, before the voice tells him,
why?
And it seems that Kevin does just that. After this, we're shown shots of the house where we can hear Kevin screaming and crying before we cut back to the bloody drawer. This was one of the more surprising beats in the film for me.
Didn't expect that to happen.
I went into it knowing that it was going to be centered around children, so naturally a lot of the fear would be happening to the children, but I didn't expect violence, at least not to that degree or of that nature. And I have to say that it's effective. if the purpose of the story is to disturb, and this is the mobile that it's using to disturb
it's working well.
then it certainly gets its point across. Now, there's a lot of people who say they do not like the film because this was a beat too far, and that you shouldn't show that in film or what have you.
Why limit yourself?
And if that turns you off to the film, I completely understand. And especially compared to how well the children were portrayed earlier, this scene hurts a lot. You can call it disgusting, you can call it over the top, but you certainly have to call it...
It's a horror movie, and it's effective.
Effective.
Yeah, hey, rewatch.
Before the voice appears again.
Rewatch. What happened, right? Did the child falling down the stairs actually die? And did the parents make a deal with the devil to bring the kid back alive? And is trading something of value or something like that. And then they all got pulled into this basically cycle or something. I don't know. But the fact that the kid stabbed himself in the eye is crazy.
To tell Kevin to wake up. Sadly, we see that during this time, Kevin is curled up in blankets, painfully panting. The television shuts itself off, and we see that the toys are now hanging everywhere across the room that Kevin's in. The darkness of the hallway seems encapsulating, and we hear this dreadful tone repeating over and over.
Don't make me hear it. Oh, you are making me hear it.
We then see the shape of someone standing at the front of the hallway.
Oh,
it walks over to
cool.
Kevin on the couch before sitting down in front of the television. The only thing that
Kaylee?
we can see is the back of its head, which
Kaylee.
appears to be long flowing hair.
Kaylee
I'll
or the
elaborate
mom?
more on this later, but I believe what we're seeing is the back of the mother's head. I don't think that it is the mother. I think that whatever this creature is,
It's
using
intimidating.
the mother's figure. Hence the image we see of the back of someone's head with flowing hair being very similar to the mother sitting on the edge of the bed whenever Kaylee went to her dad's room. During this, Kevin notices the phone again and decides to call the police. He calls 911 and explains that he hurt himself and now he feels sick. He goes on to say that he's only 4 years old, and the operator says that adults are on the way before Kevin tells him that all the doors are missing. This moment was also very heartbreaking for me,
because he doesn't understand it.
At this point, watching the film for the first time, I was so invested.
Bro, I'd be dreading it. I'd be dreading it so much. Just watching this kid trying to get through this, and now he would understand. Doors are gone, the lights. Oh, perfect. I hate and love this. I hate how effective this is, and I love that it's so effective. I hate that it's using the kids for it, but I also appreciate that like, oh, the reason it's so good is because it's using kids like this, and it was used so well, you know? End of the day, it's just a movie, you know? At the end of the day, it's just a movie, so I'm not gonna take it, you know, like that, but it's great. I love it. I love this.
In the mystery of what was happening and the horrors that I was seeing on screen, and then it kind of slows down for a minute and we just hear a scared child asking someone to come help them.
And it's just
and
so
it is a brutal scene that I think perfectly gets across the point that this is a very depressing story. Kevin drops the phone when he hears something down the hallway, and whenever he looks back at the phone with his flashlight, it's been turned into a toy phone. Kevin asks the voice how it did that. And the voice says that it can do anything, and that Kaylee didn't do as she was told, and that she wanted her mom and dad, so it took her mouth away. The voice then tells Kevin to come upstairs and says it will protect him. As Kevin makes his way upstairs, it seems the inside of the house flips upside down. As Kevin is now walking across the ceiling,
this is some
the voice
entity.
tells Kevin to keep going, but Kevin asks to go back as he's very scared. As Kevin's walking through the house, we hear this deep, guttural animal noise get louder and louder and closer as Kevin gets more and more afraid.
Oh, fuck no.
Before the noise is on top of him, the scene cuts and we're given an image of all of Kevin's toys and a dollhouse lying on what appears to be the ceiling of the house itself. The text says that it is 572 days as the camera pulls back to what appears to be an impossibly long hallway adorned with Kevin's Legos. We see the image of the mom at the edge of the bed from earlier as it seems she's slowly erased from reality. We hear some kind of monster screaming. It sounds somewhere between a child and a demon. The living room of the house is now completely upside down, but the television is still playing regardless. We are given images of a dollhouse floating in the abyss. And we see someone crawling around and using their flashlight, checking on a noise that's getting closer and closer. We then see the toy phone again, Only whenever the flashlight's off, it appears to be a horrific demon, snarling, ready to kill. But whenever Kevin turns on his flashlight, it's just the toy phone. This scene also, to me,
hold on, let me
Kevin
look at
turns
that.
on his flashlight, horrific demon, snarling, ready to kill.
Oh, shit.
But whenever Kevin turns on his flashlight, it's just the toy phone. This scene also, to me, perfectly captures the feeling of being afraid of the shadow in the corner of your room.
But you don't know what it is.
As Kevin is looking at this phone in the darkness, it looks like some demon with its face reared back, ready to attack, only for him to shine his light on it, and it's simply a phone. Yeah. It ties into the main idea of the film, which again, I'll talk about in a minute. But I don't know if I've ever seen something so accurately portray the idea of being afraid of the coat hanging up in your closet as much as this phone's evil eyes. The phone then breaks into a loud ring and a distorted, broken smile. The sounds of Kevin's whispers become dark and morbid, as if whatever part of him was child and innocent is now fading away. In the living room, we see the images that were shown at the beginning of the movie of the family and memories they shared now
they're
away.
missing.
Members of the family half erased, faces non-existent. Everything that they were is now formless and void. We then hear a child screaming as we see blood get thrown across what is now the ceiling, but is normally the carpet on the floor of the house. Blood gets thrown across the room before we hear the presto changeo music from before that indicated a time loop within the television. As the sound of this time loop plays over and over, we see blood flying onto the carpet before it disappears and flies back again.
Is he in a death
loop?
All
of this happening while the sounds of a monster screaming and a child crying are played in unison, before we see the text that simply reads, "Mommy." As we see a repetition of this slaughter,
what's happening? I don't understand this.
And asks to watch something happy. While this happens, we
I went from understanding the story to now just it's completely overlapping me. What the fuck is happening to these kids? Oh no.
See what appears to be the painted image of a door. And as the screen zooms in, a heavenly melody plays. We then cut again to an image in the darkness with what appears to be a formless face.
That is
the face of a woman staring back at us. The same voice from earlier once again says to go to sleep. And as we hold the shot, a child asks, "What's your name?"
What's the name? No, okay.
And with that,
what's your name?
Ends. So, that was
morbid,
a lot.
disturbing.
Now, if you hadn't seen the film before I said all of that, then you may have thought that I must be mistaken. A lot of the scenes I described occur non sequitur to what I had just mentioned. But the purpose of the film isn't to deliver a conventional narrative that gives answers and provides resolution. Instead, the purpose of this film is simply to terrify. And before I talk about what I think's happening in the film and what I think the literal events
I want to know. I want to know the theories.
I think it's more important to talk about that fear. And to do that correctly, I need to tell you a story. When I was about
story time.
6
I'm in
years
it.
old, I think I was 6 about to turn 7. There was one night that I had fallen asleep in the living room of the house with my parents and sisters, and whenever I had woken up, no one was there. Now, it turned out that what had happened is my parents were outside in the driveway, I believe, doing something with the car, and they had carried my sisters to bed. But I didn't know that.
But as a kid, didn't know that, and you freak out.
Whenever I woke up in the middle of the night, it was just me in an empty house, a very dark and empty house.
I know what he's talking about, that type of feeling.
Up until that point in my life, and I would say most of us would probably relate to this, there was never a moment where I was absolutely alone. And most of us probably weren't up until that age in our life, and we don't really think about it. But even if you were, say, alone in a room or alone in part of your house, there was someone else somewhere else in your house. You know, children don't typically get left completely on their lonesome. So I had never been, at least to my knowledge, alone, or at least conscious of being alone, and especially not at night in an empty house.
That would be scary to a child. I can't even blame him.
To just absolute darkness. And calling out for mom and dad and no one answering. So I began to work my way through the house through rooms that were normally filled with people and what was normally familiar with.
That
but now,
encapsulates
alone
it perfect.
At night, they seemed completely different. Everything seemed alien. And I remember walking around the couch and through the kitchen, and the counters were so much taller than me. And for some reason, I didn't know. I'd never really seen horror movies or knew much of monsters at that point in my life. I was afraid for the first time of what lurked around the corner. What would happen whenever I turned around the side of the couch and was staring down a dark hallway? What would be at
Ah, that feeling. Yeah. Yeah, if you think about it from that way and then see this movie, my God, does this sound like such a sad, tragic tale.
the end of it? And just the first time that the presence of the unknown was tangible to me at that age. And I walked through the house, and it was dark. I remember hearing some noises like the creaking of the floorboard. It was windy outside. I remember stepping outside to see if I could see anyone, and it was just the porch light and the nothingness of the forest around me, just staring into an
Oh, he
empty
lives in the
woods.
forest. That's even
And I go back
worse.
inside, and I remember that I just started crying. And you can think of me as a wuss or whatever. I was also 6. Keep in
Bro, his
mind.
man was 6. I'm not
But
gonna
I
blame
just
him.
started crying, not because I thought any specific monster was going to come for me, not because I thought I was, in any immediate
It's because the
danger,
absence of your
but it was because
comfort.
everything that I was so familiar with was gone.
Yeah, the
for some
absence
reason. I was in
absence
the
of
same
comfort.
house, I was in the same rooms. I should be comfortable with where I am, but I wasn't, and that scared me. And I cried, and my parents came in, and realistically, it couldn't have been more than 10 minutes that I was up and walking around. But just for some reason, waking up in the middle of the night was a moment. I wouldn't. Some people call it inexplicable trauma. I think trauma is a strong word for it. I would say inexplicable fear, inexplicable terror came over me for a reason I can't describe. Perhaps
Yeah.
nothing more than a child.
It's the absence of comfort, anything that makes you usually like you feel settled and comfortable and safe was because the place is like kind of irrelevant. It was the people that you usually rely on to feel comfortable just got janked away from you, and now you're like, oh, I don't, you don't have any of that. So now you feel like a dread, an emptiness, a scared of what you have to face now without that shield over you.
Being aware of the fact that they are vulnerable in a place that they shouldn't be. And that was it. And I had completely forgotten about that experience until I watched Skinamarink. Now, I would have visuals of it sometimes. I would have these glimpses, these memories of what it was like to walk around in that dark house, and I didn't really know where it was from. But while I was watching Skinamarink and I saw these 2 children go to the safety that was relegated as the television in the living room, and they set up a pillow for it and pushed the couch up to the wall.
Oh my God.
And the sharp contrast of the blue television screen against the infinite blackness of the shadows of the hallway. And these children thinking for some reason that the safety of what they know of their Legos and their television would protect them from whatever boogeyman lay down the hallway.
Yeah.
While watching it, I remembered all of that.
You would think that would work as a kid.
And that's the way that I would describe it with words.
And it's
the way
sad.
that I would describe that experience in my life was exactly what I just said. The fear of a child being afraid in a place he shouldn't be. But if I wasn't to tell you it with words, if I was to show you what it was like, then it would probably look something like this.
Hey, you better not make a jump scare, bro. I ain't ready for a jump scare. I ain't ready for a jump scare right now. My heart is not ready. But yeah, this encapsulates it pretty much what I was talking about. The absence of comfort in your own home. There's nothing there to actually make you feel comfortable.
Skinamarink captures the fear of childhood in a way I don't think I've seen anything else do, at least not to this extent. Take any memory you have from your childhood, any moment of fear that overcame you. For example, one time whenever I was playing with my cousin on a swing set we had in our backyard, I climbed up the swing set and almost stuck my face into a black widow's web that was hanging up the staircase
damn, bro.
I would normally climb. And that scared me. But whenever I think back of that, I don't have vivid memories of what my cousin and I were doing, what we were talking about. I just have the visual of putting a foot onto the playground, my hands on the ladder, and then just the spider hanging in front of my face. And it's those moments of fear from all the way back then, before I really kept track of what needed to be remembered, that my brain hard copied these instants of time. And watching Skinamarink feels like I'm watching someone else's photographs
of a hard copy
of a traumatic experience
yeah.
they had before they knew what a traumatic experience was. That's why so many shots of this film are just staring into the abyss of a house. That's why so many shots are dedicated to the corner of the television screen or the trim on a ceiling. It's the worst moment from a kid's life put to screen. It's like the film was made by a child, and I mean that in the best way. And as a matter of fact, I feel like Kyle would agree, considering that the movie was filmed in his childhood home on a budget of only $15,000 to make it even more impressive. Kyle has even
that's
said in
very
interviews
impressive.
that it is effectively a story of him and his sister in the house that he grew up in. And if you were to ask Kyle where he got his idea for the cinematography, I would reckon it has something to do with a boy who was afraid of his house at night. And as I said, Skinamarink prioritizes this. There is a narrative, but its focus is to translate that horror to you. That when you're watching these brief shots of walls or a television screen, that it underlines this sense of dread.
I know we kind of moved on from it, but I'm like, when he called the phone, did he ever call police? Like, did the call actually go through, and did he call police, and then they showed up and they didn't find anything? Or like, the house was missing or something, you know, like did he actually contact humans?
Important. Something terrible happened here, and we're having it explained to us the way someone's trying to make sense of it themselves. It's a series of traumatic moments translated by someone who was too innocent to understand them. And it's for that reason that I think whatever I say about the plot or the narrative really doesn't affect your experience with the film. And that's also one of the reasons I think experimental film is so important. Because if it wasn't for people who dared to do something as weird as make a movie that's mostly a composition of dark hallways and the corners of rooms, then we wouldn't be able to have experiences like that. So, in short, whole purpose of this video, support the film. It's coming out on Shudder soon. Watch it when it does. It'll be out the 3rd, I think.
2nd.
I think it'll come out February the 3rd. I'll put up a text if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. Because I want to see more stuff like this. It's kind of the natural endpoint of analog horror, right? Because the whole idea with analog horror as it developed on the internet was this idea of preying on the nostalgia that a lot of us had for things like analog television and analog tech, and using that as a mobile to scare us. Well, Skinamarink is the nostalgia of nostalgia. It's the nostalgia of being a child, of growing up in the house that you were born into, and the fears that can reside in it. It is quite literally preying upon the nature of nostalgia itself. And I see it as a natural endpoint for a lot of ideas that things like analog horror have built up.
I could definitely kind of relate to the fear of the house, because like I've had times where parents go shopping, right, as a child, around like, I don't know, 6, and they'd be gone till like 8 p.m. right, and I was like probably 7, and they would leave me behind, and then it would start getting dark, and then it gets dark, and I was like, I'm the only one home, so I'm like, is mom and dad coming back? Where are they? Did something bad happen? I'm here alone. Oh no, you know?
Breaks it down to the point of making you feel the fear that you do through the lens of nostalgia, through the things you grew up with now being creepy. And like I said, I love it. Because at the end of the day, what is more precious and nostalgic than childhood? And what could be more disturbing than ruining it? So with that, let's talk about what the plot of the movie is. There's some things we know to be true. There are two children, Kevin and Kaylee, who are brother and sister. They are inside of a house, presumably at least their father's house, if not both of their parents' house. And something very wrong is happening within that house. Now, there are a ton of theories for this movie floating online. I'm going to present what I think is the most true, probably.
Okay,
but
does it involve demons?
Mean that it's correct.
Does
and
it involve
there's a ton
demons?
of really cool ones that I've seen online as well. One of them being the idea that Kevin is in a sort of coma, and all of the events we see within the movie are the outside world interacting with him inside of this dollhouse he's concocted within his mind. Another theory that Kevin is dead and the events of the film are his journey through the afterlife. One of the main proponents of both the coma theory and the Kevin is dead theory is his fall at the beginning of the film.
Yeah.
And the theory that the entire movie is an allegory for child abuse and the fear that children may have living in a house with abusive parents. And I want to throw my hat into the ring with what I believe the events of the film to be.
Tell me.
I don't have a cool, snappy name for it, so just call it the Wendigoon theory.
It's perfect.
The first thing we need to establish
Tell me about it.
Is that there is something wrong with the kid's mom.
Yes. Yeah, they always talk about the mom in a way that's like...
She is not shown initially whenever we know everything that's happening to be within reality. Whenever it's Kevin falling down the staircase and the father taking him to the hospital. She's not shown in any of that. And typically, if a father and mother are living together and the boy needs to go to the hospital, you'd imagine the mom to go with him.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, I believe the call that the father has at the beginning of the film, where he's telling someone that Kevin fell and hurt his head, I believe that call was to the mother.
So... he's fine, but Kevin fell down the stairs and hit his head. No, they didn't even need to do stuff.
God, what are these wide scenes,
There's also
bro?
the question posed by the kids earlier in the story when they say, "Why is mom crying?" As well as a statement shortly after when I believe Kaylee says, "I don't want to talk about mom." And whenever we see what appears to be the mom sitting on the end of the bed, a lot of people have pointed that the lines she says sound a lot like a mother telling their children that her and their father are getting a divorce.
Yeah.
When she says, "Your father and I love you and Kevin very much." I think that a divorce is a little bit simplistic to look at it. I think there's something more sinister going on. It is definitively mentioned that mom left somewhere, because whenever the kids can't find dad, Kevin says maybe dad went with mom. However, while divorce and separation may be a part of it, I think the mom, either willingly or unwittingly, invited something into the house.
That's what I'm thinking.
She seems to be the sort of catalyst.
I'm thinking the mom did some witchcraft or something, you know? The mom did something.
For a lot of the supernatural events that go on. What that thing is, probably a demon, or at least some kind of monstrous creature. In the beginning of the movie, it seems to be a sort of poltergeist, manipulating the television, trying to learn how to loop time, before doing things like making toys disappear and chairs go up to the ceiling, as well as, removing all the windows and doors in the house. Before eventually, whenever Kevin has fully passed into this upside-down sphere of reality, becoming the snarling, monstrous noise we hear getting louder and louder. However, it's whenever we see depictions of this monster that it's synonymous with the mother. When Kaylee sees the monster reach out from the closet, it's because the mother went in and we heard her bones cracking and her crying out in pain.
Or the face in the end of like a female
became
woman.
This creature that now lives in the closet.
Yeah. Crack and then hand out. Why are you prolonging it? It's making me uncomfortable.
And if you'll remember, at the end of the film, whenever we see the blood flying out into the floor over and over again, Kevin asks, "Mommy." Perhaps it's because the creature he sees attacking him is the figure of his mother.
Yeah.
Not to mention the image of the mother shortly after Kevin harms himself, when we see her crouch down in front of the TV and simply stare at it. However, if the mother did willingly invite this entity into their lives, I don't think she meant for it to go this far. In the last sentences of what we can assume to be the mother, we hear her on the end of the bed saying that her and their father love the kids very much. And she seems almost remorseful and asks Kaylee to close her eyes before the transformation begins. I think the mother was either possessed or let something into the house and it took over her body. And from there, this demonic entity began to meddle with the kids' lives. We see symbolism of a dollhouse played over and over, both whenever we see the house itself physically being manipulated and the images of things like a dollhouse resting in the void.
Yeah.
This poltergeist physically removed all the doors and windows, meaning there's no way anyone could get out of the house.
At least not a kid.
From there, it simply began to toy with them, moving their toys around, learning to loop time so that at the end it could seemingly torture and kill the kids over and over again. Kaylee cried out for her mother, so it took her mouth away. When Kevin doesn't want to play with this creature, it makes him go to the knife drawer. It seems to be an evil spirit, and again, you could pretty much call it a demon, a monster, whatever you want. But whatever it is, it's here to meddle and hurt these kids for whatever diabolical reason or senseless reason it has in store. I believe there's a lot of imagery that's purposefully given in the cartoons the kids are watching. And I know I may be reading too far into it, but if I was making this movie and had a kids cartoon play on the TV, I would make it mean something. In one cartoon, we see a spider trap someone in a web. And in another, we see a rabbit
bunny
in the
disappearing.
Presto Chango short phase out of reality, making itself disappear. The children are the victims of this monster's dollhouse. And sadly, it seems there's nothing they can do about it. The text on screen that says 572 days might imply that that's how long they've been part of this cycle.
Really?
Where they're forced to be tortured by a monster that looks like they're
That's so
supposedly time infinite. I also think in the beginning of the movie that Kevin was receptive to it. At the beginning, whenever we see him sitting in the hallway looking up at something, he seems to be playing hide and go seek with nothing. But it's more than likely whatever this entity is. And as his father mentioned,
I was playing with him.
Says that he's been sleepwalking. So I think the mother somehow invited this creature into the house and became the vessel for it, and Kevin was one of the first ones to pick up on it. So as the story goes on, he's the last one to fully succumb to whatever this monster is. In the final shots of the film, I think that this face we see hovering in the darkness is the form of what their mother used to be. Just like the paintings and the image of the mother on the end of the bed, all of them are being melted away and just becoming a part of this nightmare world, formless and without purpose.
This is
At
fucked.
the end of the film, whenever Kevin asks the face what its name is, it doesn't have an answer, because every part of this family has faded away into this hellish nightmare. In the beginning of the video, I mentioned that if you're interested in Skinamarink, that you should go watch Heck on Kyle's channel.
And what is that?
And that's because Heck was effectively a proof of concept for Skinamarink. It was a shorter film that had the same ideas and concept both in how it was shot and I believe how the story was being told as Skinamarink. And the plot of that story is, spoilers, a boy is trapped in hell with his mother. That hell being a twisted version of the house they lived in. And I believe that in Skinamarink,
and the
children
mom's evil,
were simply
or killing him,
victims
or trying
of
to
a
in
power
some way.
they could never hope to understand. Now, Kyle has said that there is a very clear narrative and story for the film that he has completely mapped out, but he doesn't want to tell people what it is because the purpose of the film, as I mentioned earlier, is the fear and not knowing of whatever this entity
100%.
is. However, in one of his few answers about the story, he did say, if people pay attention, they see it's basically a Hansel and Gretel story. And I believe that Hansel and Gretel,
I don't know what that
Kevin
is.
and Kaylee, are the victims of the Wicked Witch or their mother's awful deeds. Perhaps at the end, when Kevin says that he wants to watch something happy, it means that the children have broken out of this cycle somehow. But considering the state of how terrible this whole scenario is, and to
I don't
imagine
think
children
so.
in it,
I don't
and
think they broke
especially
out.
some of the imagery there at the end, I doubt it. But hey, if you want to be happy, just tell yourself that they changed the channel and that metaphorically knocked him out of this purgatory nightmare scenario or something. I don't know. It's a very sad movie. But it's also a
It's
story
not
that
meant
I
to be a good
and
ending.
believe needs to exist. Because if horror is going to stay exciting and terrifying, then it needs to stay new. And seeing a poltergeist encounter that results in an infinite time loop of death and murder, all presented from the memories of a child,
it's fucked up,
is pretty
but
new.
it's good.
And I think it's pretty cool.
Yes,
hopefully,
it is.
if you stuck around this long, you think it's pretty cool as well.
Yes,
and
it
I
is.
just want to say thank you for watching.
This was a good
Again,
video.
Above all else, support Skinamarink when it comes out. It, I think, is out of theaters now. You should have gone and seen it when it was in theaters. But if it's not, at the moment, probably should have looked this up, whatever. If it's not in theaters anymore, it will be on Shudder very, very soon. And I highly, highly recommend that you check out Kyle's channel, Bite Size Nightmares. Not only Heck, but there's a ton of fantastic horror on the site as well. I did a live stream on the second channel where we went through and picked a bunch of the random ones. What Kyle would do is he would take comments that people would have where they just talked about nightmares they had, and he would do short films based on those nightmares. And I thought they were fantastic, and they were very cool, and it's so, I cannot express to you how important it is and how cool it is that a YouTuber who made movies just in his house with his personal equipment about bite-sized horror stories, eventually honed his craft enough to make a full feature length, and that is now sort of breaking the internet with being a new and inventive kind of horror that is so inspiring, and it should be inspiring to anyone.
Low-key, we are watching a master being born. We're watching somebody that is literally developing a new trend of psychological horror being born right in front of us, is what I'm hearing.
Wants to create content of any kind. The idea that a guy just simply started making videos and now has one of the most inventive horror films of the past year. I know technically it came out 2023 and it's only been a month, but even if we count 2022, Skinamarink is in the running as one of the top dogs.
Right, 2 years ago.
And I love seeing new stuff done with horror. And again, I recommend, it's not for everyone. I understand that experimental horror is experimental. And I've seen a bunch of people who are like, this is the scariest thing I've ever seen. And people who are like, I just stared at the wall for half an hour. And it's entire horror subjective. So once again, watch Heck. If you like Heck, then you'll love Skinamarink. And if you don't like Heck, then you may not want to go with Skinamarink. It's different. But again, even if it doesn't succeed for you, I think we can all agree it still needs to exist. It still needs to do.
Chat, I think I'm gonna watch some of this horror stuff with some friends. You guys would be into that? Watch some horror stuff with my friends, you know? I think I'm gonna drag them into this, you know? Is he like, hey, let's watch something? Yeah, what is it? Don't worry about it, you know, I pull them in here, and then boom, we're doing a horror reaction together. Yeah, have a good night. Have a good night, Link. Thank you for passing by. Yeah, I think I'm gonna do that. I think I'm gonna drag some people into these reactions.
Well, because as someone who is starting to talk to people in like studios and whatnot, or at least hearing people talk about what studios want, they are just looking to hear the same stories over and over again because they're businessmen. They need things to sell well. And as long as basic 1-2 stories with, you know, basic plot lines and resolutions are what people are buying, that's all that the scripts they're going to be selling. So if something like Skinamarink does well, that means we have a chance. We have a chance to do more. We have a chance to incorporate fears like that into something else. That means that horror continues to thrive and be new. And in one of the interviews, I read a bunch of interviews from Kyle. In one of them, I think he said it best. He said, horror, in spite of what every other genre has done, horror has always been new and inventive. It's always been doing its own thing off to the side. And perhaps to some degree, horror will always continue to thrive and evolve in spite of what the greater industry around it decides to do. But I'm happy that Skinamarink is the way we're going now. Because if this is stage one, I can't wait to see what people crank out in the next several years. I'm so excited. But support Skinamarink. It's a great project.
I can't wait for this to get oversaturated, though.
Support Kyle's channel on YouTube, Bite Size Nightmares. It's criminally underrated, especially for what is now an award-winning director. He definitely needs the support. Well, he doesn't need my support, but he needs more eyes on his project because he definitely deserves it. But with that, I've talked about this movie a lot. As you can tell, I'm a bit of a fan. Hopefully you enjoy it. And I think it's really cool. So anyway, I'm going to get to editing this so that you can see it soon. And I believe that should do it for now. Again, support Skinamarink. And I believe that should do it. So, and also thank you, Kyle, of course, for saying I could do the video. You're really cool, man. I'm so excited that you're making it here. It's an inspiration to me and every other content creator on this site. Congratulations, you deserve it. But with that, should be done. So I just want to say thank you for watching.
And I'm glad I watched.
You enjoyed. And I will see you in the next one.
I will see you later. I'm definitely going to be checking on this. Bye. All right, hold up. I need to... Well, you know what? Thank you very much for watching, YouTube. I will catch you guys later. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. As always, the original video is going to be in the top of the description down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And that's going to be all for me. Bye-bye.